Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Backlog Banter. This is our discussion about Abram's thoughts on Returnal. Actually, I think I get into point this way because the camera's flipped. But this is the morning of Friday, the day that new Pokemon Snap and Returnal both come out. Abram stayed up last night to play the game, and he's ready to give his thoughts on it. Now, I haven't played the game, so we're going to have a little bit of an interesting dichotomy here. But before that, if you want to talk to us about new Pokemon Snap, about Returnal, about other video games, movies, whatever, join our Discord, link in the description. You got a subscribe button down there. You got a little like button, a couple of things you can diddle with. But Abram Buhner, tell me about Returnal, because I have gotten some, how do you say, exacerbatory? Is that the word? That's not what I was looking for. But excited messages from you about this game.
Yeah, Returnal's fucking awesome. It's really that simple. So I have played Tucker about 2.5 hours of the game, which is enough for me to do 5 runs, beat the first boss, the first biome, and I'm into the second area. It's structured similarly to Hades, I suppose you could say, in
Sure.
that sense. Key difference, which I'll talk about in a minute, because what's so surprising to me about Returnal and why I enjoy it so much is I don't really like roguelites all that much. I've dabbled in some various ones. I thought Dead Cells was pretty cool. I thought Rogue Legacy, of course, iconic. Played a lot of that on Vita. But I've always had a hard time like really getting into roguelikes, not just playing them casually. I tried with Hades. I thought Hades was just a little bit too frustrating for me. I was really annoyed by having to redo the same areas, same bosses to kind of grind for that progression. And one key thing I like about Returnal right off the top is that you beat a boss, you beat a biome, you don't have to fight them again if you don't want to.
Is there an option to, though?
Yeah, there's an option to, but you can just move. You can keep moving forward to the next area. There's a pretty natural sense of progression. You don't keep a ton of things between runs, but when you hit those milestones, they're big enough that you can pretty seamlessly move forward, which is nice.
Sure.
But this game is just it's really excellent. I am not a humongous Housemarque fan. I actually hadn't played any of their games till earlier this year when I checked out Resogun, just so I could get a little bit of familiarity with their works. I'd always heard about it, but never experienced it. And I thought it was okay. It's just not particularly my type of game. But this really is. This is really interesting world building and third-person shooting in the context of Housemarque's like pseudo bullet hell type of arcade, action. You got like a combo multiplier. You've got these bullet hell components where everything's super projectile heavy and really slow, so you're kind of dodging around. There's a lot of DNA from their past work and from the genres they've really helped, solidify in the PlayStation ecosystem in Returnal, which is really cool. But what stands out to me above everything are really 2 main facets. There's the combat and the way that this game utilizes PlayStation 5 hardware.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about this. This is kind of the game that really shows why you might want. I think it is only PlayStation 5 exclusive, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So on top of that, it actually uses the hardware to its potential, which is why this is sort of the premier, hey, this is why you should own a PS5 big title.
Yeah, I think I would push back on the people saying this is a system seller, because I think intrinsically a $70, contextualizing everything, a $70 roguelite, which people have beaten in 17 hours or 35 hours or whatever. I don't think this game is worth buying a PS5 for.
Sure.
But if you have a PS5, you should absolutely be playing it. We talked a lot, both of us, in our Astra's Playroom review about the way that game used haptics and adaptive triggers and everything. And it was very impressive, but there was a very clear sense that game, like Astra's other titles, was built around showing off the hardware.
Yeah.
So, you feel the wind and the rain and the fucking things and the zipper and all this. And it's cool, but it was a showcase for what the system can do, not necessarily an organic integration of these things. And we were both talking after Miles Morales' kind of slight implementation and kind of lack of a lot of, use for the triggers and the haptics, if we'd actually see them implemented. And Returnal is a great example of this being done properly. You feel the pull of the trigger, you feel the rain, you feel the sort of like alien technology rumbling, and you feel her ship when you're crashing. It's really natural. This is an example of, I think, haptics and the triggers being used to increase immersion in a really organic way.
Sure.
It helps that the game is just really interesting visually. very derivative of Alien,
Yeah.
which I haven't seen enough people really mention. I mean, it's really derivative of Alien,
Yeah, I
which
mean,
is not
in
bad.
all honesty, I remember that reveal trailer and thinking, "Oh, this is just an Alien game." Like I
Yeah,
expected to see like the brood mother or whatever it's called from Aliens, just like hanging from the ceiling, and it would have been, "Oh yeah, this is a AAA Aliens game."
yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely some DNA there.
It's starting to break that mold a little bit in the second area, which is like a Mars, like sandy orange, like out exterior
Okay.
rock area, which is not very alien, but it's also pretty archetypical sci-fi. I'm
Yeah.
curious how much, original visual concepts, motifs I'm going to see as I get later
Sure.
into the
Yeah.
game. There's some pretty interesting enemies that feel way more like arcadey Housemarque, like these like blue neon guys with these big blocky heads and everything.
Sure.
So it's definitely a mix of influence. You can even see a little bit of like modern Doom in some of the designs,
Okay.
particularly some of the bosses and mini bosses. Um, so I think that between the presentation, between the visuals, between the ways it uses a dual sense, that's all great.
Hmm.
Um, but it's really how fluid the game feels and how much it just wants you to play it that I love.
Hmm.
I have come to the realization after playing God of War recently that I'm really frustrated and tired of a lot of tropes of AAA gaming. I'm tired of
Sure.
your fucking RPG systems where they don't belong.
Yeah.
I'm tired of all this big overwrought stuff, right? What I've been gravitating towards more recently, whether that's from Nintendo or games like Doom 2016 and now Returnal, are games with AAA scope and polish and innovation with more not simple but more playable mechanics that are about just getting into the
Okay.
experience.
Of
Returnal
course,
doesn't.
classically, God of War, not a playable video game. One of the
Well,
big
the problem.
criticisms of it, when it won Game of the Year in 2018, all that.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into
That's a
God of War, but
joke.
the problem, it's like, oh, he's a fucking guy. Make your axe stronger. Oh, this fucking enemy has got at least got like a level. What is happening? Why do I have
Yeah.
gear systems? Why are there resources? This is
Hmm.
besides the point. But Tucker, Returnal doesn't even have a start screen. Doesn't even really have a
Interesting. Okay.
pause menu. You
Hmm.
you boot up the game and immediately you crash again and you're back in the experience.
Okay.
So the ship immediately crashes and you're playing right away.
Now
The
here's the question. I'm hearing you
Yeah.
talk about all of this. You have played, from my estimation, 2 hours, hour 45, somewhere around
It
there.
has actually a play clock on the ship with a bunch of
Okay.
like really cool stats, like how many rooms you've cleared, how many enemies you've defeated, things like that. It's like 2 hours 34 minutes or
Okay.
something.
Now my question is,
Yeah,
you talking about how Hades, we had some discussion about Hades on
yeah,
BLB when I was playing it, and then you gave it a try. That game obviously got a lot of critical acclaim, pulled a lot of people into the roguelike formula that weren't initially, myself included. But you were talking about how there was some frustration there with the
yeah.
difficulty and the repetition and all of that. Now you are riding high on your first impressions, but from everything I've heard about this game, it gets fucking hard real quick. Like, not maybe not the first few hours, maybe not, get a few bosses in a few loops, but do you think that this will grab you enough to push past that difficulty spike that I think comes later on in the game?
Yeah, because I'm not a bitch boy. Here's the
Well, you
problem.
are, but
Well, for different reasons. Here's the problem, Tucker. I think that the difficulty has been over and undersold by different people, and I think it
sure.
comes down to what type of game you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty good at shooters.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not finding it particularly difficult. A lot of the difficulty comes from so far and from what I've seen from various reviews. The difficulty does come from what gear you have and whether you're actually finding more powerful weapons and you're boosting your stats in a way that's going to let you move forward. Because the actual combat loop is not particularly deep. It reminds me of Doom 2016 in the way that it's about fluid movement. It's about arcade reflexes, but it's not particularly complex, but it's so fast paced that it's continually engaging. And when you die, it's really easy to jump back in.
Sure.
And I think one big difference between Hades and Returnal is that
It's
Hades
just
talks
a
you.
singular Hades.
I know, just one of them. Hades talks your fucking ear off every time you die,
Sure.
which is fine, and I understand the appeal of that game, but I just didn't find it engaging. I didn't
Sure.
want to die in Zagreus. It's like, let's shrug it off and walk out and talk to the fucking dog and give someone a gift and fucking
Best
turn in
part of
some
that game.
turn in some keys at the mirror or whatever.
Best part of that game.
And here's where I differ from a lot of people.
Sure.
I think that a roguelike is a gameplay first experience.
Mhm.
And Returnal, because it's made by Housemarque, is that gameplay first experience because they understand that gameplay is king, and they, like I said, no fucking title screen, none of this nonsense. Jump right back in. You're going, and there is lore, there is storytelling here.
Sure.
It's integrated in pretty organic ways. Like you saw in a trailer that you run into like Celine's house. That's just in the middle of the fucking
Yeah, like PT basically.
basically exactly like PT.
Like a lot like PT. Like people were like,
Yeah.
"Holy shit, is this PT coming back on PS5?" Oh, that's funny.
So I went into the house. You don't have to go into the house, but it incentivizes you to go in, and there's some mysterious elements. You basically faint and you wake up with an item that gives you the ability to revive after a death. So there's gameplay reasons to engage with the storytelling, which is backgrounded, but really organically implemented. So people who want the story, it's there. You find audio logs at Celine, which is really cool. You find
audio logs. Let's go.
Here's what's interesting. About them.
Bioshock Control, Bioshock Infinite. I'm an audio log guy. Not because I
Audio-
think they're great. I actually think audio logs kind of suck, but
yes, they do.
they usually tell some interesting stories, which is why I'm still a fan of them, even if they're usually terribly implemented in almost everything.
They're really well implemented here because a really interesting element of the world in the audio logs is you find them on Celine's dead bodies. You find her corpses from like past attempts before you started the game, not your own corpses from each of your deaths, but ones that are organically just put throughout the world, and they've got audio logs. So you're learning a little bit about an older Celine you don't remember, who went through this already, and kind of is giving you a little bit of information about what you didn't understand and cluing you into things later on. Storytelling is really organic. There's almost like a Metroid Prime approach to environmental storytelling, which is really interesting. Scanning shit, decoding alien languages, finding out all of these things, but it never takes away from that central gameplay.
Sure.
And when you're running around and you're using your melee, you're using your weapons, you're dodging, alt firing, you're dashing and everything, it really feels incredible. It is, like I said, it's a Doom 2016 again. It's the return to basics in a modern context that just keeps you playing. Now, the one big problem with Returnal, and this is it's been talked about up and down the fucking internet, you cannot save and quit a run.
Like in the middle of a run, you mean?
Yeah, you cannot do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know many roguelikes where you can. Is that a thing that most games can? I mean, obviously, Hades, if it's on Switch, you press the home button,
but here that has been a common defense of this. But just because a genre hasn't implemented something doesn't mean it shouldn't.
Sure.
The runs here are long.
Okay.
I had a couple quick deaths because I was playing at like 2 a.m. I was getting real fucking tired, so I had to go to bed. But my 2 substantial runs were both over an hour, and that's only seeing the first area of the game. People are saying online that runs can last 2 to 4 hours.
Wow.
And that is just, it's not really acceptable for a static console game to do that, I don't think. And B, it just doesn't really make sense. There's no reason why in such a playable gameplay experience you shouldn't just be allowed to save and quit and come back. I don't understand why Housemarque didn't implement that, and I would have to imagine that that's going to be patched in.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like something that is super hard to implement in a patch once they see the feedback from it. But yeah,
the other problem, of course, that people are experiencing is sometimes the game has a nasty issue where sometimes if you put your PS5 into rest mode in the middle of a run, you'll wake up and the game will have crashed.
Yeah, I've seen some people complaining about crashes.
Of course, I've only played 2.5 hours, so I haven't experienced any yet. But I just think simple things like that could really help. I also think the game could generally use another quality of life pass. I think it's pretty clear in some respects that this is Housemarque's first project on this scale in this genre.
Yeah.
I would have liked to be able to mark things on my map to come back to later, because environments do run together a little bit. So being able to just say, okay, here's a thing I want to revisit once I have X power up or whatever I want to, or I left an item here that I might want later because you can only carry a certain number of things, which I could just ping it on my map so I could, very easily look and chart my path back, because the game's procedurally generated. but in the sense that it has a bunch of pre-built rooms and it stitches them together.
Sure.
So it's
Kind
pseudo
of like
procedurally
the
generated.
Dungeon Maker in Link's Awakening, if you know what I'm saying.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised if Dante was the one fucking putting the maps together before your run began.
Yeah.
But I just think this game's really great. It's punishing. It's important to note that I really like shooters, so
Yeah.
that it's not as hard for me as it is for other people.
Mm-hmm.
People are like, I couldn't get out of the second biome. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get out of the second biome when I play this afternoon.
Yeah.
So
We'll see.
My subjective skill in an opinion of this genre is definitely helping it, but I think certain things like not having the talkativeness of Hades, not having to replay bosses if I don't want to, feeling that there are very clear milestones towards progress. These things really help me, and then the fact that the core gameplay loop is just so satisfying. The ways that there's fucking particle effects coming out of your ears and your eyes and your mouth and your nose and everything. And it looks beautiful. It runs really well. I mean, crashes notwithstanding, but I haven't experienced them yet. But there's no chugging. It's so smooth. The DualSense is fucking having a field day in your hands. It's a surprising experience. I didn't expect to enjoy it nearly this much. I expected the only hurdle to me playing more of it is the fact that next week is my last week at classes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be really busy with work, and I'm not gonna have the flexibility of playing it on the go. But it's really great. I think it's also a great counterpoint to what we were talking about of PlayStation's like emphasis on the Naughty Dog blockbuster.
Yeah.
Right.
Unfortunately, this is before that mandate was made, so we'll have to see how this transitions into the future. Obviously, this seems to be doing probably better than they were expecting, to be honest. I mean, it's getting a lot of groundswell at the moment, but I'm excited that we've got a new AAA franchise, maybe at least a new IP from Sony that's obviously being pushed as one of the forefront titles of the PS5 the new generation. But with this new mandate, we'll have to see how this influences that going into the future.
I think Housemarque is probably safe because A, they're a second party studio, and B, they're just not equipped to make what Naughty Dog makes.
Yeah.
I'll be curious if this game sells well.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that it's probably not going to.
Okay.
There's always a dichotomy between the critical reception and like the hardcore insular PlayStation reception.
Sure.
And the general fan base. I mean, there's like 8 million PS5s in the wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there is a $70 roguelike from Housemarque that's a new IP. That's a hard sell.
It's a hard sell. And even for me, I'm honestly excited to give this game a try.
Yeah.
I may or may not have access to it within the coming week, and I'll provide my own thoughts on it, whether or not that means we do a review later on in the future. But it's a hard sell for me this would be the first $70 game that I would be buying. I already had trepidation purchasing new Pokemon Snap today for $60. I mean, when you think about it, buying a game for plus tax near close to $100, which is over 10 hours of work for me. That's a hard sell, but it's the future we're moving into for games, so it'll become more normalized. It's just we'll have to get over that hump at first.
We should talk about we should talk about the fake moral panic around the $70 price tag at some point.
With
I think that'd be really, really interesting discussion.
Sure.
But not right now. I don't want to bitch at people who don't want to pay $70 for games right now.
Normal people.
All right. Well,
I think that was a great discussion. Went a little longer than I expected, but I think this will be a solid first impressions discussion to put out for you guys content-wise. And I really hope you enjoyed hearing his thoughts. If you're playing Returnal, if you're liking it, if you're playing new Pokemon Snap, we'll have a video about that later today. But talk to us in the comments, in the Discord, like and subscribe, all of that. And we'll see you guys later. You got one final thing to say?
One final thing to say?
Yeah. No, you don't.
No, I didn't. I was trying to filibuster. I didn't have anything.
Yeah.
Tucker.
Shit, glass coming off from this. It's fucking Returnal time. Oh Lord, he coming. Did she just hand that to you?
Yeah.
Why? She couldn't keep that? Too heavy?
Apparently not.
Is she over encumbered as this fucking Skyrim?